If I had known that one night in a cheap motel with my stepson would change everything, I would have never asked him to drive me there. But life has a way of testing the parts of us we try hardest to bury. What happened next wasn't just unexpected, it was irreversible. Let me take you back to the beginning, before the motel, before the storm, when all I wanted was to see my husband again, and ended up seeing myself more clearly than ever. That evening, alone in the tiny hotel room with Ryan, I realized life isn't shaped by plans, but by the cracks in them. David had been away in another city for months. I missed him, but not in the way a wife misses her husband. It was his silence, his fading warmth, that hollowed me out. I'd been living in the echoes of a marriage, and those echoes were growing fainter by the day. That morning, I had looked at myself in the mirror. The lines on my face whispered stories of resilience, of longing. Though time had marked me, there was still something alive in my eyes, something defiant. I felt the weight of loneliness, yet also the flicker of a forgotten confidence. Downstairs, Ryan was finishing breakfast. He looked up at me with that usual, lopsided grin. "College starts soon," I reminded him, half playful. "You should get better at driving." "Sure, stepmom," he chuckled. "As long as Dad buys me a better car." I smirked and rolled my eyes. "Come on, take me to your dad." We hit the road. The car hummed along as Ryan hummed off-key to the radio. His jokes weren't all funny, but they filled the space. I scrolled through my phone in the back seat, half listening, half lost in my thoughts. Then, hiss. The car shuddered and fell silent. "What's going on?" I asked, sitting up. "The car's done," Ryan muttered, steering it off the road. We tried everything, calls, checking the engine, even kicking the tires like it might help. 2 hours passed. The sun dropped lower. We were stuck. There was only one motel nearby. It was run down, barely lit, and surrounded by silence. Ryan spoke to the desk clerk. I lingered behind, unsure. David can't know we stayed here, I thought. It would only raise questions neither of us could answer. The room was small, just one bed, a flickering light, a tired fan buzzing faintly in the ceiling. "This is it," I whispered. Ryan flopped onto the bed. "What did you expect, a spa?" I smiled, despite the tension inside. "This heat is unbearable," I said, running a hand along the back of my neck. "I need a shower." "Go ahead," he said. "I'll survive." I stepped into the bathroom and locked the door gently. The mirror caught my gaze again. The heat clung to me, but the water washed over my thoughts like a prayer. I closed my eyes. Just get through the night. At 48, I had weathered storms. Ryan was 21, full of energy, headed for something bigger. He was David's son, my stepson. This trip was a bridge, not a crossroads. But the storm in my chest didn't seem to care. When I returned, he was already asleep. One arm draped over his eyes. The soft rhythm of his breath filled the silence. I chose the chair by the window, pulled a light blanket over my lap, and stared into the darkened street beyond the glass. One night. That's all it was. I tried to sleep, but the night was a storm beneath my skin. The hum of the AC, the faint streetlight slipping through the curtain, the silence. All of it made the room feel heavier. From my seat, I glanced toward the bed. Ryan shifted, murmuring in his sleep. The hotel robe he had thrown on was loose, his damp hair curled slightly against his forehead. He looked peaceful, boyish and unaware. I turned away, clutching the thin blanket tighter, trying to settle the battle inside me. "What are you doing, Julia?" Time passed slowly, the way it always does when the heart is restless. At one point, I drifted into a shallow doze, only to wake again with a jolt. Ryan stirred, running a hand through his hair. The robe slipped slightly as he sat up, blinking sleep from his eyes. Our eyes met. He gave a sleepy smile. "Didn't mean to wake you." I shook my head. "You didn't." He looked toward the empty chair. "You're going to sleep there all night?" "There's only one bed," I replied, softer than I intended. Ryan hesitated. "It's fine. I won't snore too loud." For a moment, we just stared at each other. The tension wasn't sharp. It was quiet, slow-burning, the kind that creeps up like a rising tide. I'm not sure I'll sleep anyway, I murmured. It's been a long day. He patted the bed lightly. You can at least rest. It's not forbidden to be comfortable. I paused, then stood. I crossed the small room and perched carefully on the edge of the bed, facing away from him. The air felt thicker now, weighted with unsaid things. His presence beside me was a warmth I couldn't ignore, even if I tried. A long silence stretched between us, broken only by the low hum of the AC and the soft creak of the bed springs as he shifted. This trip was supposed to be about visiting your father, I whispered, my voice trembling slightly. But nothing has gone the way I imagined. Ryan exhaled slowly. Yeah, life has a way of taking its own turns. Another beat of silence. I used to think things would just get better on their own, I said. That if I waited long enough, David and I would find our way back. Ryan didn't answer at first. When he finally did, his voice was low. He doesn't really see you anymore, does he? I turned slightly, surprised by the rawness in his tone. No, I replied. He doesn't. Ryan lay back again, folding his arms behind his head. He doesn't know what he's missing. I looked at him, trying to read between his words, wondering where they came from. I think, he added, sometimes people drift so far from each other, they forget what it was like to be close. Those words sat heavily between us. He wasn't just talking about David and me. There was something else there, a current I was afraid to name. As the clock ticked past midnight, I finally lay down on my side of the bed, my back turned to him. The sheets were cool, but my thoughts burned. I closed my eyes, trying to focus on the sound of my own breathing. Don't read into this, I told myself. Don't open a door you'll never be able to close. But the door had already cracked, and the wind was seeping in. I don't know how long I lay there, counting the seconds between heartbeats. But somewhere in that fragile quiet, I began to drift. Then, a whisper of movement. I kept my eyes closed, sensing Ryan shifting beside me. The bed dipped slightly with his weight as he sat up. I could hear the rustle of fabric, the soft thump of his feet against the floor. I opened my eyes just a sliver. Ryan stood by the wardrobe, tugging on a pair of athletic shorts. He moved slowly, quietly, careful not to wake me. Or so he thought. In the dim light, I saw the curve of his back, lean and sun-kissed. My breath caught before I could stop it. I turned my face back to the wall, ashamed of the thoughts that stirred within me. This is your stepson, Julia. You came here for David. What are you doing? When I sensed he'd returned to the bed, I kept still, feigning sleep, even as my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. But then I felt it, the weight of his gaze. Lingering, heavy, unmistakable. Ryan was watching me, and not in the innocent, casual way a child watches a guardian. No. This gaze was charged, hesitant, searching. I didn't dare open my eyes. Didn't dare move. Not because I was afraid of him, but because I was afraid of what I might do if I met that gaze. What I might feel. Minutes passed. The room was too quiet. Then a shift. I opened my eyes just enough to see him sitting at the far edge of the bed, back to me now. His shoulders rose and fell with a sigh, his hands gripping the edge of the mattress. Ryan. I whispered, my voice barely audible. He turned slightly. You're awake. I nodded, sitting up. Couldn't sleep. Ryan looked at me, then truly looked. Not with amusement, not with teasing, but with a kind of tenderness that disarmed me. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, he said quietly. I can sleep in the chair if... No, I interrupted. It's okay. You didn't do anything wrong. We sat in silence again, the space between us charged with things we weren't saying. I keep thinking about the drive earlier, he said. That moment when the car broke down. It's like the universe wanted to trap us together. I tried to smile, but my heart clenched. That sounds dramatic, I said. Maybe, he chuckled softly. But haven't you ever felt like you were in the middle of something that wasn't accidental? His words sat with me, heavy, honest, and terrifyingly close to the truth. Yes, I whispered. I've felt that way before. He looked at me again, eyes dark and unreadable. Are you feeling it now? I didn't answer.
Couldn't.
Instead, I stood and walked toward the window, pulling back the curtain slightly. The parking lot outside was empty, washed in amber from the street lamps. A truck passed slowly, its engine low and rumbling. Otherwise, the world outside was still. I came here to see David, I said finally. But he's not the one who's here. Ryan didn't move. Do you want to talk about him? I let the curtain fall. No, I said. Not tonight. I turned to him, arms folded. My gaze dropped to the floor, then rose again to meet his. Do you ever feel like you're pretending to be okay for everyone else's sake? All the time, he replied without hesitation. That made me smile.
A small, sad thing.
But real. Then came the question I hadn't meant to ask. Do you think we're wrong for being here together like this? He didn't look away. I think it's okay to feel things, he said slowly. Even confusing ones. What matters is what we do with them. And for the first time all night, I felt grounded. Not safe, but seen. I returned to the bed and sat beside him again. Closer now.
We
should sleep, I said softly. Yeah, he nodded. We should. But we didn't lie down right away. We just sat there, in the dim motel room, two souls tangled in silence, tethered by something neither of us could name. We finally lay back down. The silence was comforting now, not heavy. But sleep didn't come easily. My thoughts churned, rewinding the day's chaos like a movie reel I couldn't stop. The old air conditioner hummed unevenly above us. I stared at the ceiling, listening to Ryan's quiet, steady breathing. Just as I felt sleep finally pulling at me, I heard a rustle beside me. Then a whisper. This hotel will haunt me forever, Ryan said, his voice barely more than a breath. I don't know why, but something about tonight. It feels like a turning point. I turned my head slightly, watching a silhouette in the low light. His features were soft, almost childlike again, though his words carried a gravity far beyond his years. It's just a motel, I whispered. Maybe, he replied. But it's the first place I ever saw you as a person, not just my dad's wife. His words were gentle, but they hit hard. A strange stillness settled between us. One not of awkwardness, but of understanding. The kind that follows a moment too honest to undo. I swallowed the lump in my throat. My mind screamed dangerous, but my heart, it leaned in. And so did I. I'm going to try and sleep, I said quietly, rolling slightly to face the other side. Ryan didn't respond, but I could feel him shift slightly too, still near, but respectful of the line we both knew existed. Eventually, sleep did take me. It came in fits, but it came. When I awoke, sunlight bled through the slats of the curtain. The motel room was quiet. Ryan was gone. My heart skipped, irrationally. Then I heard a car engine outside. I pulled on my sandals and opened the door. There he was, sweat-drenched, hands greasy, crouched beside the old car. He looked up and smiled. Battery was loose. I fixed it. I walked toward him, arms folded to guard myself against the morning chill, and maybe something deeper. All ready? I asked. He stood, wiping his hands on a rag. I didn't sleep much. Thought I'd get a head start. There was pride in his eyes. And exhaustion. But also something else. Something unspoken that passed between us like static. We should get going, I said. Yeah, he nodded. Dad's waiting. We loaded up the car in silence. The engine rumbled to life, and we pulled onto the highway, the sun climbing higher behind us. I stared out the window, my thoughts a storm of memory and uncertainty. Last night felt like a dream, too vivid to dismiss, too complex to explain. Ryan reached over and turned on the radio. Soft acoustic music filled the space between us. I glanced at him. He caught my eye, and for a moment, the mask of casual indifference slipped. I'm not going to pretend nothing happened, he said, voice low. But I'm also not going to make it worse. I nodded slowly. That was enough. As the city skyline crept into view, so did the weight of reality. David. Responsibility. The fragile balance I'd nearly toppled. And yet, a flicker of something lingered. Not guilt.
Not shame.
but awakening. The city passed us by in a blur of glass and motion. Traffic swelled as we got closer to David's office downtown. I kept my eyes on the window, but I could feel Ryan glancing my way every so often, like he wanted to say something but couldn't find the words. Part of me wanted to fill the silence, to explain, to justify, to laugh it off. But the deeper part of me, the woman I hadn't heard from in years, told me to simply feel the moment for what it was. Unfinished, unspoken, undeniable. When we finally pulled into the parking lot, David stood by the curb, phone in hand, tapping at the screen like time owed him something. The familiar weight of expectation settled on my shoulders like an old coat. Ryan got out first. "Hey, Dad," he called, forcing a casual tone. David looked up, his expression unreadable. He walked to the car, nodded at me through the windshield, then glanced at his son. "You found her," he said. Ryan offered a tight smile. "Told you I would." As I stepped out, David kissed my cheek, his hand briefly resting on my back. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. Tired. It's been a long night. He didn't press further. He never did. That had always been his way, his kindness edged with distance. Ryan moved to the trunk, unloading my small overnight bag. He handed it to me, his hand brushing mine for a fraction of a second too long. His eyes held something unspoken, an apology, a warning, or perhaps a question he already knew the answer to. I didn't say a word, just nodded once, taking the bag and turning toward David's car. As we drove away, David launched into a conversation about the meeting he had that morning, the client who canceled, the coffee that was too bitter. I responded in murmurs, my thoughts elsewhere. Through the rearview mirror, I caught Ryan's car merging into traffic behind us. And then, like mist after sunrise, he was gone. That night, long after David had fallen asleep beside me, I sat by the window of our apartment, watching the glow of the city stretch into the distance. The sky was cloudless, but I felt the storm still swirling inside me. Gentler now, but no less real. I thought of Ryan, not with longing, not with regret, but with clarity. There was something about being seen, truly seen, even for just one night, that wakes a person up. It reminded me of who I was before roles and routines dulled my edges. The temptation had passed, but the mirror it held up to my heart had not shattered. In the silence of the city, I whispered to the night, there are moments we don't act on, but they still change us. I share this story not for absolution, but for reflection. Because somewhere, someone is feeling invisible, unheard, trapped in the roles they've been assigned. And to them I say, you're not alone. Your story doesn't have to follow the lines you were handed. You are allowed to feel, to question, to evolve. Let this be your quiet permission to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And if this story stirred something in you, even a whisper, share it. Because stories, when shared, have the power to heal what we didn't know was hurting. If you've stayed until the end, thank you. Don't just listen, respond. What part of this story did you feel the most? Hit that like button if this resonated. Subscribe for more stories that explore the unspoken. And remember, sometimes the heart speaks clearest in silence.